Not all ideas make it to reality. It's a fact of life. There's only so many hours of the day and so many people out there willing to make it happen. Disney is no exception, and there have been hundreds upon hundreds of attractions, shows, and even entire lands that never made it to the parks. Though, when it comes to Disney Imagineering, no good idea seems to go to waste, and they get used in some way or another. With that in mind, allow me to introduce you to the Enchanted Snow Palace. A dark ride intended for Anaheim's Fantasyland, it never made it past the concept stage. Today we'll be looking at what the attraction was meant to be, why it was never built, and what later became of the idea. The answers might surprise you. So, grab yourself a nice hot mug of cocoa, cocoon yourself in your favorite blanket, and relax as we learn about Disney's Lost Snow Queen attraction. The story begins in the late 1970s with Disney legend Marc Davis. For those of you not in the know, Davis was one of Disney's best artists and character designers. He helped bring to life some of Disney's best characters, such as Maleficent, Cinderella, Tinkerbell, Alice, and Cruella de Vil. You also have him to thank for designing characters and attractions such as the Country Bear Jamboree, Pirates of the Caribbean, the Jungle Cruise, and the Haunted Mansion. In the 70s, Davis envisioned a new attraction at Disneyland, a boat ride through a winter wonderland, an escape from the hot California summers. The attraction would have been called the Enchanted Snow Palace, and it went a little something like this. The attraction would have been disguised as a melting glacier, approximately where the Fantasyland Theater is today. Though as you got closer, you saw windows and doors, signifying someone lives there. We'd enter our boats and sail down a melting river into a winter wonderland. We'd pass by scenes of playful walruses splashing water at us, dancing polar bears, sliding animals, and a penguin orchestra playing Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker Suite.
Yeah, probably took the job for the halibut.
Speaking of which, ice giants would have been swatting at the ice fairies from Fantasia. There was a giant snow monster sitting and looking down at guests as they ride by. The exact order of these scenes is uncertain, as different sources have different interpretations. Hell, even if the ride did get made, who knows how many of these scenes would have made it to the final product. So keep in mind, a lot of this is speculation. Also featured were a group of characters called the Snowballs. I racked my brain so hard to figure out what they reminded me of, and came up with a mix of Yosemite Sam, the Lorax, and Gus the Hitchhiking Ghost. In one scene, they would have been playing instruments with telescopic legs that shrunk and grew. In another, they slid down a cave and into the water below. But all of that was just build up to the ride's climax, as we journey into an ice palace, coming face to face with the Snow Queen. Beautiful and graceful, she'd conquer a dazzling storm of frozen fractals all around us, bringing the attraction to a close. The Snow Queen was obviously inspired by the character from the Hans Christian Andersen story of the same name. Unlike the original tale, where she was an antagonist, this Snow Queen was kind and welcoming to us. Now, based on all that I've discussed, this seems like another fine addition to the lineup of Fantasyland dark rides. This wouldn't be too out of place near Peter Pan's Flight or It's a Small World. Davis's art is beautiful as always, and the show scenes seem child-friendly and charming. How did this not make it past the concept stage? Well, all those scenes are just that. Scenes. There isn't much of a narrative driving the scenes. It's just a series of vignettes. Yes, these were the days before C existed, and before nerds with too much free time could piece together a half-coherent narrative for an attraction based on a sign. But all of the classic Disneyland dark rides had a story, whether it be flying with Peter Pan through Neverland, traveling with Alice into Wonderland, or going to hell with Mr. Toad. There is a story with narrative structure. They have clear beginnings, middles, and ends. Enchanted Snow Palace didn't have that. It was just a bunch of pretty scenes. And in the 1970s, Disney wasn't looking for just a bunch of pretty scenes. The old dark rides were growing stale, especially without the Disneys around to guide them. New management wanted attractions that were thrilling and worthy of repeat rides. Space Mountain, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, all that stuff. They didn't have complex show scenes, but they cost less to make, and they still brought in crowds. Enchanted Snow Palace, for all the pretty sets, probably wouldn't have been worth repeat ride-throughs. It wasn't nostalgic like the classic dark rides, and it wasn't as elaborate as Pirates or the Mansion. Also, around that same time, planning for Epcot had begun to take off, so it might have just gotten lost in the shuffle. Whatever the case might be, we may never know, but hopes for the Enchanted Snow Palace to be built, how you say, melted. But the story does not end there. Fast forward a few decades, and in 2013, Frozen hit theaters. If you were like me, half of your love for Frozen came from one of the main heroines, Elsa. Elsa's evolution from the original story to the final film could probably make for its own video, but to connect this more with the Enchanted Snow Palace, let's put this art of her next to the Snow Queen concept art. The hair, the eyes, the pattern on her dress, and the color palette are similar. Even the filmmakers pointed this out.
It was amazing to us to see the artwork, though, because there are a lot of things that we said, wait a minute, this is like what we were doing.
We were channeling Mark, and we didn't even know it.
Yeah.
I shouldn't need to tell you that Frozen was a monster hit. Critics and audiences loved it. You couldn't find merch of it to save your life, and you had to rope drop meet and greets with the characters. Seriously, if you weren't there, you can't even begin to understand how huge it was. So, naturally, Disney wanted to capitalize on that with an attraction. With Frozen's Nordic aesthetics, the perfect place for it would be in the Norway Pavilion at Epcot. Of course, the Norway Pavilion had an attraction already. Maelstrom, a boat ride through Norwegian history. They didn't have room to just build a new one. Though, while it was decently popular, Maelstrom didn't pull in huge crowds. An anecdote to know where I stood. In the 2 decades I've been going to Walt Disney World on a semi-regular basis, I never rode Maelstrom once. I rode Superstar Limo, but I never rode Maelstrom. So, with all this in mind, and with kind of that context, Disney pulled the trigger and closed Maelstrom to build Frozen Ever After in its place. And here is where the story comes full circle. Whether intentional or not, there are clear parallels between the concepts for Enchanted Snow Palace and Frozen Ever After. The scene where the characters ice skate in a circle, Olaf ice skating as you enter Elsa's palace, giant snow monster, Marshmallow with the snow geese, and of course the climaxes are almost exactly the same. You enter a snow palace and are greeted by a snow queen who conjures a storm around you. It may have taken several decades, and it might not have been in the way intended, but Enchanted Snow Palace did make it into the Disney parks, from a certain point of view and all that jazz. When it comes to canceled Disney attractions, the ideas never seem to go to waste. Whether it be Beastly Kingdom or Western River Expedition, if you know what you're looking for, you can find remnants and references to them everywhere. Enchanted Snow Palace might not be as legendary as other canceled Disney projects, but its legacy lives on. I have a lot of creative people following me, so allow me to give you some advice. If you think a project isn't going anywhere, don't throw it out. Just shelve it. Save any writing you leave on the cutting room floor. Hold on to all your old sketches. You might find use for them one day. It might take a little bit of patience and a little bit of thought, but truly good ideas always have a use. And that concludes a brief history on the Enchanted Snow Palace. Now I'll pass the question off to you. What do you think of the attraction? Do you think it should still be built? What's your favorite canceled Disney project? Whatever you're thinking, let me know down in the comments. But that's all the time I've got for today. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.